Hello and welcome to another episode of the Bubbs on Sports podcast. Today is Saturday, January 27th, the day before Championship Sunday, the Final Four in the NFL. Chiefs, Ravens, and the Lions, Niners will face off tomorrow afternoon into the evening. As always, joining me is DiMari Cooley. DiMari, how's it going, man?
Good. I'm excited for tomorrow's games. Kind of sucks. You're kind of saying off
Yeah.
air, we're getting to the end of the football season, but we got some good games tomorrow. So I'm excited to see who will be taking their talents to Vegas for a good Super Bowl.
Yeah, I definitely agree. It's bittersweet. Playoffs as a whole, I feel like at times are a little bittersweet because as much as they are exciting and every that's what you ultimately play for is to get to the postseason and hopefully get to Vegas. That's what these four teams got on their minds. But once these games are over, especially after this weekend, it's going to be tough because next week you got the bye weekend and you've got basically 2 weeks to talk about one game. So February and January, mostly February, it's pretty rough month because football will be ending very soon. But before we get into the two games tomorrow, there was a couple coaching hirings this weekend as teams begin to fill out their coaching needs. But the biggest one was Jim Harbaugh going to the Los Angeles Chargers. It seemed like for a while there, it felt like this was kind of one of those like where there's smoke, there's fire. It seemed like there was a while there that the writing was on the wall for Harbaugh to end up with the Chargers or one of these prime coaches to end up with the Chargers, whether it was Harbaugh, Belichick, or even maybe like a variable, somebody that's proven, been in the league, good culture guy, and they get that guy in Harbaugh. What are your initial reactions from this move?
Yeah, I'm not surprised. Like you kind of say,
Mm-hmm.
there's some things kind of pointing the direction toward him going to the Chargers, but I think it's a
Mm-hmm.
great fit. He wanted a quarterback still fairly young with a lot of talent, a lot of arm talent. You get that in Justin Herbert. He has the weapons around him offensively and defensively. So hopefully Harbaugh can come in, maybe bring some of his staff from Michigan if he's interested,
Mm-hmm.
or bring a few pieces from around the league to kind of help the quarterback out. Definitely help the defense out. That was one of the worst secondaries in all of
Yeah.
football. So no matter how good, offensively, you gotta be good at defense, which seems like Harbaugh's thing at Michigan was built off a very strong defense that can help you win. So, hopefully he brings in some guys, like I said, that can help everybody, especially on that defensive end, and he just gels Herbert into what he wants to be. Maybe, hopefully, even keep some pieces around. I've seen some speculation. Maybe Keenan Allen might be gone, and still Khalil
Yeah.
Mack, just to set cap space. But I feel like let's try to run it with this team, exact team from last year, bringing a few pieces here in free
Mm-hmm.
agency, and the Chargers could be competing for a division title.
Yeah, definitely. I totally agree. It'll be interesting to see what happens with Keenan Allen and Mike Williams. Those two kind of, that duo of receivers that could potentially get moved on from. But I tend to agree. I don't think he's going to want to completely tear this thing apart. There's a foundation with this team. You've got a quarterback, you've got two good receivers. You need some pieces on defense, especially in the secondary, which, of course, was, as you mentioned, a disaster last year. But I feel like this was such a favorable spot because this team found a way to still make the playoffs with arguably the worst coach in the NFL and Brandon Staley, the guy he was lost. And a lot of the issues were he had his fingerprints all over that defense. So I think just the upgrade there at coach, if he hires a solid defensive staff, I think automatically you're going to see an upgrade plus whatever other talent they bring in on that defensive side of the ball. But look, Herbert is got a lot of talent. This is a guy that I think you give him the right coach, you give him the right opportunity, can definitely make some plays. And would you see a case where this is a playoff team last year or next year? Because I think many some are expecting maybe this to kind of next year be like a reset year, a retool year, and then go all in again in 2025. But do you see this team potentially competing for a playoff spot just next year with just one off season for Harbaugh?
It's kind of hard to say because
Mm-hmm.
you look around the league and you look at teams like Houston who ended up making the playoffs,
Yeah.
and you can even throw in the Colts who were a team that was the game away from the playoffs. And we're talking about first year coaches, so I think the NFL has kind of gotten away from that. Well, if you're in your first year as a coach, you're not expected to succeed as much
Yeah.
as you may like, but just seeing some guys around the league, seeing some different teams around the league, and with Harbaugh's resume again at Michigan, I mean, college is a completely different level than NFL.
Mm-hmm.
They are talking about a team I believe was in the not the championship, but the college football playoff 3 straight years, I believe, and they just won the national championship. So
Yeah.
he has what it takes to win, especially on the college level. So if he can just get those guys in the locker room to buy in to what he's trying to get going in that organization,
Mhm.
I do think that they could make the playoffs. And the AFC, at least the AFC West, is like Mahomes and then everybody else.
Yeah.
So you're really just battling with Mahomes. So I feel like if that team can go in 9 to 10 wins, which I think they are capable of doing if they again
Yep.
fix up some defense, get some kind of figure out some scheme issues. I think they can
Yep.
make the playoffs next year. It's not really a far shot, especially like you just said with the quarterback, with the talent and talent around him.
Yeah, definitely. Really, it's just Mahomes and maybe Zach Wilson if he goes to Denver. The Zach Wilson Denver propaganda here. Um, but yeah, I mean, he's got obviously the experience. Made the Super Bowl with the Niners. And obviously, of course, lost that game. But we did everything. I think Michigan fans is a little bit of a bittersweet because you're happy to see him get another opportunity in NFL, but he did, you're also happy that what he was able to do in Michigan when he got there, he had two main goals, and that was to beat Ohio State because for a while there, Ohio State was dominating Michigan and it was turning into a Ohio State dominant rivalry. He went in there, changed that, started to beat Ohio State many consecutive years in a row. And then he also went in there to win a national championship, and he did that. So, great career for him at Michigan. Of course, had some of the sign stealing stuff, but I still don't think you could take away what he was able to do. 3 Big Ten championships. Obviously won the Big Ten East Division 4 times, national champion. And his NFL record too speaks for itself, 44-19-1. And then of course, in college, he's 128-45. So that's a 740 win percentage. So a lot of success, a lot of winning. And I believe the Chargers play the Ravens next year, which will set up a John versus Jim brother matchup, which of course we saw a couple years ago, or back 2000, what was it, 13, Ray Lewis's last year in the Super Bowl. So we'll get to see that again next year. And who knows, maybe next year we're talking about AFC Championship game, Ravens, Chargers, and a brother battle. But moving on here to the games tomorrow, one of the Harbaughs will be participating. John Harbaugh and the Baltimore Ravens will face off against the Kansas City Chiefs. Ravens, obviously the home team in this one, clinched the 1 seed. Chiefs beat the Dolphins in round 1, go on the road, beat the Bills. Let's look at the Chiefs angle for this first, look at them first, and then we'll take a look at the Ravens. Last weekend, Chiefs take care of business, of course, in Buffalo. It seemed like that was the best chance for the Bills. What was your reaction from that game, just from a Bills perspective, too? Because that was just another killer loss for them in the playoffs. And you feel for them because it's another one of those, missed kicks, missed opportunity. Felt like this was their year. They don't get it done, but a lot of credit does go to the Kansas City Chiefs for going into a tough environment, almost like an underdog in a way. Many people didn't believe they would win. We both picked the Bills to win, so I was surprised, and they took care of business.
Yeah, to just briefly on the Bills. I am quite surprised, man.
Yep.
That kick it sucked, but that's something they've kind of dealt with before. So
Yeah.
hopefully they can figure it out come next year. Hopefully fans aren't too hard on Tyler Bass. I mean, he's been good for them all year, but play that kind of really stood out for me that game that kind of maybe would have changed it is, there was a point in that game where as a play Josh Allen had Stephon Diggs on a crosser and he threw the post and he underthrew it, which was a guaranteed touchdown. And that came back to bite him. I mean, just watching that game for Buffalo, I feel like they played as well as they could have played, and they missed some execution, like things they could have executed on, but they played great. Josh Allen played good. He was safe with the ball. The defense played good. I mean, even though Kansas City's offense is what they used to be, but to still hold Kansas City to under 30 points, they just too many missed opportunities for them. And I know we thought the championship window was closed, but from watching that game, Buffalo, I think maybe next year if they bring a lot of their guys back, because also considering Gabe Davis didn't play in that game, but they kind of run it back with that team again. I feel there's a possibility that they could finally get over the Mahomes hump if Justin Herbert maybe can take care of some business for them come next year. But
Yeah.
props to Mahomes. We were talking about it earlier how he was kind of throwing to a bunch of target workers. No offense, target workers, but
Yeah.
a bunch of guys like besides Rasheed Rice and who came along kind of late. Travis
Hmm.
Kelsey, who didn't really, he probably had his worst year, like statistically, and still
Yeah.
almost had 1,000 yards. But just you're watching the team earlier, and you're like, there's no way Kansas City is even making it to the second round of the playoffs. And then you had the don't count out Patrick Mahomes group, like you can't go against Patrick Mahomes, and now I think we've seen it where you can't kind of bet against Patrick Mahomes. It's incredible what he's doing like in his career, and this sounds crazy, but I asked some people a question over the weekend. I said, "Do you think Mahomes will overtake Brady for the greatest of all time?" Some disagreed, said there's no way, but I mean, it's starting to look like it. Super Bowl rings are not just his resume up until the point of being, was it 26-year-old, 27, I believe. I could be wrong,
Hmm.
but his his resume at his age is nothing like we've seen before. So, yeah, props to home. Andrew, one of the best coaches in all of football, just taking this team again. Struggling with drops, I think probably had the most drops in the NFL, or was in that range, that 1 to 3 range of drops amongst teams in the NFL. Now you're about to probably be playing for another Super Bowl. So hats off to Mahomes.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. And to your thing there about Mahomes and Brady, just quickly pulling up the stats here. When you look at the age, Mahomes is 28. If he would to win this year, that would be 3 rings at 28. Brady won 3 rings at 27. So they're basically identical. I mean, they're just kind of
Identical.
a year,
Yeah.
yeah, a year apart. So, and then Brady too. A lot of people forget, but Brady, they won obviously 02, 04, and of course back to back 04, 05, but they didn't win again until Brady was 37. And that was all the way in 2015 because they had those 2 years where they lost to the Giants. Some people I think don't always realize that with the Patriots dynasty is they had kind of that 10-year drought where they did not win a Super Bowl. Now, of course, they got there twice and lost to Eli, but Brady won 3 from 24 through 27 and didn't win again until 37. So unless if Mahomes goes through that type of drought, if they continue this, Mahomes could have more rings than Brady had until like his later 30s. Obviously, Brady actually won more in his later years than he did in his earlier years, which is kind of crazy to think. He actually got better with age, which is not usually normal. Maybe I don't know how Mahomes will deal with that when he's 35, 36, 37, if he'll continue to play at a high level or if his prime will be shorter than what Brady did. But yeah, I mean, look, if he wins, if the Chiefs win this year, I think you've got to start to put that in the conversation because that's 3 rings already. Brady, of course, won 7, 3 rings by 28. I mean, what do you think? Do you think he could get to 7 or somewhere? I mean, it's you assume he has what at least he's 28. You assume he has at least 10 years left. Let's just say 10 years.
With
Crazy to win
10 years,
4 in the next 10. I mean, possibly.
it's
I don't know.
possible. It's just seeing the direction that they're in, kind of like you just said. If he wins, that's 3 at the age of 28. But to
Hmm.
win one Super Bowl is hard. To win 6 is insane. So,
Yeah.
and kind of looking at it, but like we're at 3 already. You're kind of looking at them like, who's stopping him? Like who
Yeah.
might possibly stop him from that many rings? Because Kansas City, like with age, if he stays in Kansas City, as he continues to get older, all they're going to do is bring in more weapons to help him to kind of do less, to kind of preserve him. Don't risk injury, nothing like that.
Yeah.
There's a good chance he might be able to top Brady and kind of get up there in the amount of rings. I think it can happen.
Yeah, and it's crazy too to think that this year, if he wins it this year especially, will be his probably worst team he'll ever play with. Like you said, it's basically just a bunch of target workers that he's throwing to, which is true. I mean, outside of Rashee Rice, I know Marquez Valdez-Scantling made a nice play in the Bills game, but outside of Rice mainly, Kelsey's had a good year, but it's not been the same dominant Kelsey. I think it's the first year in his career, I believe, that he hasn't had 1,000 yards, which is crazy, and he
Yep.
still had over 900, which is still a very productive year. So, yeah, I mean, you win this year with no receivers, basically no receivers, an inexperienced Rice, and then you get to 3 already. They're only going to get better. They're going to bring in a number 1 talent next year, probably, whoever that might be. It's certainly possible. I mean, he's in the prime of his career, but just back to that game for 1 second. When you just look at it from a Bills perspective, they beat the Chiefs in a couple different stats. They had more first downs. They had more total yards. They had more rushing yards. They won the time of possession. They dominated the time of possession, 37 minutes to 22 minutes. but it was those a couple big plays that the Chiefs made that the Bills didn't, and that's what separates the two teams. And of course, Kansas City comes out on top there. So when you look at it from a Baltimore Ravens angle, you've got what many believe is and what many think will be the MVP in Lamar Jackson, who had a big game against Houston, threw for 152 yards and 2 touchdowns, ran for 100 more and 2 touchdowns, so had 4 total touchdowns and 252 total yards. A huge game against Houston. I will say, though, from a Texans perspective, they hung around in this game. They went into halftime. It was 10-10. They even missed a kick, too. They could have easily went into halftime up 13-10. I think talent and experience for Baltimore just took over in the second half. Houston started to get worn down. They were obviously less talented, inexperienced. I think that kind of just took over. What was your reaction from that game and in Baltimore going into this one as well as, of course, the home favorite?
Yeah, I think Houston's going to be a team that we're talking about for quite a while.
Yeah.
First year coach, first year quarterback, arguably maybe your best receiver was hurt. So,
Yeah.
once they kind of get some guys back, kind of add to some things, Houston's going to be, we thought it was going to be Jacksonville in the AFC South, but I think Houston's going to kind of be on that stretch of, hey, AFC South is ours. And I can see them win it for the next 4 or 5 years. And I even think they could possibly get to the Super Bowl. But I think that Houston game says a lot about Baltimore. I mean, again, look at the numbers that Lamar put up, and somebody looking, you're like 150 yards, like that's really nothing. But when you account for what he did, rushing and just not turning the ball over, I think this might spoil a little bit kind of what direction I'm leaning in. But I think this is the year Baltimore does it, and especially going into this week, you get Mark Andrews back.
Yeah.
So for a team that already is very run heavy and love to run the ball, you add Mark Andrews back. You have Isaiah Likely, so now you can run these 2 tight end sets who are both great receiving tight ends. I think I hate to say it, but I said it last week where we hope the Taylor Swift, saga kind of comes to end in Orchard Park. But I think Baltimore is going to handle that this week. And like I said, I guess that gives my pick away. I'm going to take Baltimore against these two. I just think this is the year Lamar does it. Everything's kind of going right for him. Everyone's healthy besides the running back room, but they kind of make up for that with Lamar. The defense is playing good. I'm taking the Ravens in this game. I can give it away.
Yeah, and to your point with Isaiah Likely, too, obviously it's huge that Mark Andrews coming back, but Likely deserves a ton of credit, like you mentioned, to be able to run that 12 personnel, 2 tight end sets. But he's had 6 touchdowns in the last 7 games. Like, he's really taken over in a big way for Andrews, and I think a big reason why the Ravens have been so good without Andrews has obviously been because of him. He's been very reliable, and credit to Lamar Jackson kind of adjusting on a fly to the backup tight end. But the Ravens use their tight ends really well. And Andrews, even if he's not at 100%, he's still a huge asset and somebody that is going to make the defense focus on him, which is going to take the attention off of guys like Zay Flowers and Odell, and even likely if they run those 12 personnel. So just having his presence out there is huge. So you're taking Baltimore. I will be honest here, like, the whole Taylor Swift stuff, that's got to end. And I agree with that. I will say, though, I'm going to take the Chiefs here. I'm not rooting for the Chiefs, but I am going to take the Chiefs here because I've been going against Mahomes for a while. So I went against him last year against the Bengals in the AFC Championship game, was wrong. I picked against him in the Super Bowl, was wrong. I picked against him last week, was wrong. I did take the Chiefs against the Dolphins, but I feel like recently, every time I pick against Mahomes, I'm wrong. So I'm actually going to go with Mahomes here. I think I'm going to go on his side here. I'm going to take him because I've picked against him a lot recently and I've just been completely wrong. So maybe this is maybe I'm the jinx. Like, if I pick Mahomes, they'll lose. So we'll go with Mahomes. We'll go with the Chiefs. And I don't know. I just think Mahomes, if there was, they're going to find a way I think, I think he's good. And that's what it is. You think, how would you say, what would you be your score prediction for this one? Do you see a high scoring game or kind of a low scoring, defensive matchup where it's going to come down to potentially a field goal, or how do you see it?
Yeah, I see it very similar to the Buffalo game, at least for the Chiefs,
Mm-hmm.
where it's going to come down to whoever has the ball last, maybe
Yep.
whoever makes the less mistakes. I don't see this being a blowout. the Chiefs are going to find a way to kind of contain Lamar, and vice versa with the Ravens containing Patrick Mahomes. So it's going to be low scoring. I'm going to probably take a score of maybe 31-27, which doesn't seem like low scoring, but from what we've seen those offenses do, I think that can be
Yeah.
considered low scoring for them to give me this by 4.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's going to be something around that. I like the Bills game. I'll say like 28, 24, 27, 23, something along those lines as well. Come down to the last possession, come down to a kick, and see what happens. But hopefully we get a good one. Hopefully both games are good. So now moving on to the second game of the afternoon here. It'll be 6:30 Eastern on Fox. It'll be the Lions and the Niners. At this point, we'll know who's in the AFC, and the one deciding factor will be who comes away with this one. We'll start with the Lions, again, the road team going up against the one-seeded Niners. They've won both games at home, took care of business against the Bucks and Baker Mayfield. Just quickly here, you got to give a lot of credit to the Buccaneers this season. Mayfield comes in. Todd Bowles is, a lot of people think, yeah, he's going to be gone. They're going to win 5 games. Mike Evans is going to be gone. They might trade him at the deadline. This team's going to be a disaster. They won 9 games. They won a playoff round. And Mayfield is great. I think they've got to bring him back. Do you see Mayfield coming back this year? And then obviously your thoughts too on what the Lions have been able to do in the 2 rounds against the Rams and, of course, against Tampa.
Yeah, you definitely have to bring Mayfield back. And the theme kind of we've been saying since we talked about the Chargers, run it again. Let's run it back.
Yep.
I mean, to step in the shoes of Brady is already one thing. But to even be in the preseason and just OTAs, kind of before the season really kicked off, and it was just a needle, a balancing beam of, is it going to be Kyle Trask? Is it going to be Baker Mayfield? Who might it possibly be? So they go with Baker. I mean, they did start off 3-1. Then they lost, I believe, 4 in a row at the point.
Yeah.
To kind of be like, all right, Baker, that's it. They could have probably thought about maybe moving him at the deadline or just putting Kyle Trask in. And then if Kyle Trask doesn't perform as well, you put Baker back in. But, they stuck with him and they gave him that chance to build the trust with the receivers and with the coaches and the offensive line. And it paid off. I mean, they might have won that division like literally at the skin of their teeth last week. But, again, to step in for Brady with all the expectations on you, this team just won a Super Bowl a few years ago. To step in and do that, take this team playoff. And the Eagles, we weren't big on them, but to even just, playoff wins are almost impossible, as you can see, for the Dallas Cowboys. So, to go ahead and beat Philly at home, and then you go on the road against a very good Lions team, and you almost pull that one out. And again, it's a few things here, a few mistakes here. Different plays could have went a few different ways. Yeah, I'm going to give my respect to the Bucs. I mean, you got to bring Baker back. Let's try it again next year in a division that is the worst in all of football. Keep Evans, maybe bring in somebody else because Evans and Godwin are kind of starting to age just a little bit. So, bring in some young receivers. And I think Tampa can run it back next year. They can be in the playoffs again. But I believe in them. But let's talk about Detroit here a little bit with Detroit. Kind of how you said about Mahomes, where you're like, every time you pick against Mahomes, he seems to win. And I feel like that's been Jared Goff for me the last few weeks, where I'm kind of like, if Detroit doesn't run the ball, then they're not going to win the game. And I guess I don't know. Jared Goff played great last week. I'm excited to see them play. It's kind of like never, if you'd have told me in I think 2015 that the Lions would be in the NFC Championship before Dallas, I wouldn't have believed you. But this is going to be a fun game. I don't know if you've been seeing the back and forth between C.J. Gardner-Johnson and Deebo Samuel. So that is the matchup I am so excited to see for tomorrow's game. But, the Lions, they got their hands full. I don't know what Lions team we're going to get tomorrow. Are we going to get what we've seen like the last few weeks? Or are we going to get that Lions team against Baltimore because they struggle or can struggle against very good defenses? But props to Detroit, and I think they found their guy in Jared Goff.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think I've been on the same page with you, where for a couple of weeks there, when they had that tough loss against the Bears, and then they had those losses too against the Ravens where they got blown out. There was kind of that tough stretch for Detroit where I thought that maybe Goff really wasn't the guy. I didn't think he could be that guy that could outplay really good quarterbacks and play great. in the playoffs and ultimately get it done. But here we are. He's been arguably the best quarterback this postseason. So you got to give him a ton of credit. He's been awesome, and returning back to California where it all started for him, I'm sure will be add to the emotions, add to the overall meaning of this game for the Lions and, of course, their organization. But quickly here on Tampa, yeah, I agree. I think the young receivers for them is definitely huge this year. They've got Trey Palmer too, who I thought was put together a nice season, was a 6th-round pick. So maybe they found something in him as well, which is certainly something positive for the future. So just a team there that, to win a playoff game against Philly, who went to the Super Bowl a year ago, even though they were struggling, they were still in the Super Bowl. They still had Hurts. They still had some pieces on that team, like still to win with all the expectations that were against Tampa at the beginning of the year. To win a playoff game is great for them. And then, of course, they went further than they were a year ago. So I think that's something too that's big. But yeah, back to Detroit. Goff's been great. He threw for 287 yards last week and 2 touchdowns. I think the biggest thing is just, like you mentioned, they're now on the road for the first time against a really good defense. What type of Jared Goff are you going to get? It's one thing to win playoff games at home and look great doing it. That's great. It's another thing to win a playoff game against a number 1 seed on the road, good defense, hostile environment. I think it's going to be interesting to see how Goff handles the blitz. Bose is obviously going to be a massive, massive task for them. And their offensive line's been really good this year. So if there was an offensive line that was up to it, I think it would be Detroit. But I think Detroit's got to just do what they've been doing. I think Goff's he's been getting the ball out pretty quick. He's confident. I think if they get back, if they can just continue to run the ball with Gibbs and Montgomery, and then kind of let Goff just, find the gaps, find the areas or the weaknesses in the defense, what they've been doing, finding the holes. I think that's your path to victory, not trying to do too much here, knowing what San Francisco can throw at you from a defensive standpoint. So now going over to San Francisco, the defense is great. What did you see last week, though, out of the offense? They'll get Deebo Samuel back. That is huge because without Deebo Samuel, I think the Lions would be huge, huge favorites in this one. But with Deebo Samuel in the fold again, healthy, ready to go, you saw how this offense really is not the same without him. What are your thoughts on San Francisco and Purdy as well? Do you trust him in a big game like this, or is it going to be maybe not as smooth as some think?
I personally don't think I trust Purdy, and I know this might not make sense, it might contradict itself. I personally don't trust Purdy, but I trust him enough to just put the ball in his playmaker's hands. So kind of what I mean by that is don't let him drop back and throw the ball, 45 times, especially for San Fran, which probably shouldn't be a problem because they're usually not in their game script. With a lot of it is Christian McCaffrey, but I feel it's kind of very similar to like Jared Goff, where Purdy is where they run the ball, and then there's a lot of play action kind of for him, and guys running across the middle of the field. That's kind of what you want for him. Don't try to make him be a drop back pocket passer, because as we've seen the few times, like Baltimore game and even some of last week, when you kind of force that Purdy to be that, that's not where he's playing his best ball. No. I mean, he got away from, I believe, 2 pick sixes last week that could have really altered that game. So you don't really put name in Purdy's. Deebo, like you just said, coming back. That's huge for them. So you let the playmakers do what they did all year, which is put the backpack on and carry Purdy, not send that in a way where he hasn't, kind of done his job. He's done his job. He took care of the ball, but put the ball in the hands of McCaffrey and Ayuk and Kittle, especially against the Lions defense that hasn't played the best against the Titans this year. Deebo Samuel, Hughes check, all those guys. Use every playmaker that you possibly have and just limit to what Brock Purdy has to do. And I think that's their, the best chance of them winning tomorrow.
Yeah, I totally agree. Purdy's not a guy that's going to go out there and take over a game. He's just not that type of quarterback. He's got to get the ball to his playmakers, get the ball to Deebo, Ayuk, Kittle, and of course Christian McCaffrey coming out of the backfield, which is arguably one of the best players in the NFL, let alone just running back. But yeah, when he forces things, when he tries to take over, that's when some of the mistakes are. It seems like sometimes he struggles like reading things downfield, because a lot of some of his bad mistakes have been like across the middle, downfield, some of the deeper throws, it seems, rather than just taking the short stuff, taking what's there, taking what the defense is giving you. It seems like when he tries to do too much, that's where the mistakes come. And of course, some of the interceptions and the turnover issues pop up. Um, he's the biggest factor in this one. I think, look, he's done a lot of really good things this year, but I still think there's some of those kind of just dumb rookie mistakes that he makes because he still is young. He was Mr. Irrelevant. This is still a guy that I think is learning. And I think some of those mistakes at times could take over games. And that's your biggest fear if you're a San Francisco fan. It's not what the playmakers are going to do. It's what Brock Purdy's going to do, especially in a big game like this, because there's no more excuses with this 49ers team. Like, this is for them gotta, in a way, be the year. How many more times can you make the NFC Championship game and lose and just keep running it back with the same unit? Last year, you had an excuse. That was, oh, Purdy got hurt in the NFC Championship game. You didn't have a quarterback on the road. I understand that. This year, you're at home. You're facing a team that's playing their first road playoff game with a lot of inexperience. Like, if there was a game to win, if there was a year, this is the year for them. And maybe we're kind of putting a curse onto them, because every time sometimes I say that this is the year, like I said, for Buffalo, they end up losing. So maybe that's a jinx. I apologize, Niners fans. I'm not doing it intentionally, but yeah, it ultimately comes down to Purdy on the offensive end. And it's a big year for them. It's Purdy's second year. Everyone's like, all right, this is it. Go all in with him. There's no really going back now. They're a touchdown favorite. What's your prediction for this one?
All right. It looks like the NFL probably already leaked the script, and everyone's thinking Baltimore and San Francisco. But I'm taking the Lions on this one. Surprisingly, I am going to take the Lions. I feel like their experience Jared Goff has been there before. So, and even the 49ers last year, but I just feel like the experience of that Lions team, that 49ers defense is a little overrated, just a little bit. We've seen some games where they haven't looked their best, and I feel like Detroit can possibly give them problems if they can run the ball well, and again let Jared Goff kind of beat you throwing the ball off the play action.
Yep.
And that's where they start to see a lot of man-to-man because they want to stop the run, and you're able to use the speed downfield and throw the ball over the 49ers' head, which their secondary is not the best. That front seven kind of covers up the issues in the secondary. But I'm going to take the Lions on this one. I think this could possibly be the year that they finally make the Super Bowl. It's been a long drought, and I think I'm just going to make a mistake or two that's going to kind of hurt their chances at winning. So give me Detroit, and I think Detroit wins by 3 points.
Yeah, I'm on board with you there. I think while a lot of the things stack up against the Lions, it's just an amazing story. They're playing with a lot of energy. I think they also go into this game with, look, there's always going to be pressure, but I think they go into this game with less pressure than Niners. As we mentioned, this is a big year for the Niners. If they don't get it done this year, you have to ask questions in the offseason. Is this core of guys really good enough? Because how many more years can you go into it? Oh, Super Bowl favorites, and then still lose, still fall short. So this is big for them. As for the Lions, look, I mean, I know all of us really said it, myself included, back in August. They were a dark horse team to make it. Here they are, NFC Championship game. A lot of people don't see them winning. They're on the road. A lot of things stacked up against them. I think they're going to come into this game kind of like they've went into the postseason and playing loose, not playing with much pressure, just going out there, understanding that they've made it this far, which is great. It's the furthest, the Lions have never seen this type of success really before in franchise history. And they're just going to go in, play loose, and Goff's playing he's playing at an elite level right now. I mean, he's balling out. He's playing great, and he's really surprised me, because that was my biggest concern with Detroit, was if Goff could outplay, some of these quarterbacks like a Stafford in the playoffs, even a Mayfield who was playing, really well. But I'm going to go with the Lions too. I'm going to take Detroit. I'm going to roll with the Dan Campbell train. Picked against them against the Rams, got it wrong. Picked against them against the Bucks. Going to roll with them. Got it correct. So I'm not going to go against them here again. I'll take Detroit on the road, and I'll say Detroit Lions Super Bowl, and you got a Lions Ravens Super Bowl. Would you root for who would be like your team you root for then if the Lions get there? Would you root for the Lions or the Ravens?
I'm going to root for the Ravens just because
Lions.
Lamar
Mhm.
played down south where I played at Boynton Beach, Palm Beach Gardens. We used to play them almost every year. So I'm going with Lamar for this one. Team Ravens.
Mhm. That's cool. Yeah. Yeah, I'll probably roll with the Lions, but I mean if it's the Chiefs, would you go with the Lions? That's what yeah. Wait.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Lions, Chiefs, yeah. Hopefully we don't have to
Absolutely. If
get
it's
hopefully we don't have to get to that stage.
anybody but the Chiefs at this point, it's not even a Mahomes thing. It's just anybody but the Chiefs. Let's leave it at that.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep, that's definitely right. So a lot of good football on tomorrow, two big games. Hopefully we get two great games, maybe another 13-second classic. We'll see. Any other closing thoughts here before we end it?
Just I don't know if you saw it, but I saw the script for next year. I saw Super Bowl colors
Yep.
for next year, so I am
Jets.
confirming a Cowboys Dolphins Super Bowl
Ooh.
next year. I've seen the blue, I've seen the teal, that aqua teal, whatever you want to call it. That's my picks for next year's Super Bowl. Calling it early.
Yeah. Yeah, see, I saw two different ones. I saw that one too, and I saw there was another one with like green and purple, I think it was. Maybe I'm just
I did that
envisioning.
one.
See
That
that one?
made me think possibly the
Cowboys,
Jets. I
Dolphins.
mean,
Maybe the Jets.
Aaron Rodgers back with the green, purple
Yeah.
in the NFC. Are we talking about Jets, Vikings? I don't know.
It's possible, or we're just talking about like the Packers, Ravens, because the Jets don't win much. Maybe next
Well,
year's the year for both of our teams. There's always next year.
well, Zach Wilson won't be there, so you just take those picks that
Nope.
Denver gives you for Zach Wilson. You build around
Yep.
Aaron Rodgers some more. Boom. Now we're talking.
Rodgers, Zach Wilson, Denver. You better watch out. That's going to be Harbaugh's biggest. Zach Wilson's going to go like 2-0 against Harbaugh this year.
That's a
Watch
sleeper
that.
team.
Imagine that.
Zach Wilson.
Imagine that.
Zach Wilson Broncos is a sleeper team.
Sleeper. They're a dark horse. They're going to be the Lions of 2025. They're going
I
to,
can see
or
it.
2024, but they're going to go. They got Sean Payton. Zach's going to go lead him to the promised land.
I can see it.
That would be crazy. If that actually happened. I don't think so. I think if there was a court like seeing Darnold not completely succeed elsewhere and he was better than Zach, I just don't think Zach's gonna do much. But he's gonna go to Denver and then we'll see because the Denver propaganda is real. But should be a lot of fun. So anyway, that'll do it for another episode of the Bubbs on Sports podcast. And as always, thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.